Now, for years, South Africa has been faced with rolling power cuts, but never have things been as bad as they are now. Eskom has appointed a new board in an effort to try and avoid the collapse of the nation's aging power infrastructure. But why is South Africa in this electricity crisis? To help us answer that question and more, we've got Verner Ayukegba, who's the Senior Vice President at the African Energy Chamber. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And maybe we can start with that broad question. Why does South Africa have an electricity crisis? Is it an issue of an energy shortage, or are there some other components?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. Yes, I think it's no news to everybody that South Africa has significant problems at the moment with respect to supplying energy to the economy and to the nation. The reason for that, there are many reasons for that. One of the reasons is generation capacity. As the population has grown significantly over the past 20, 30 years, the generation capacity which the country has not increased in line with that growth. So as you can imagine, some of those very old coal plants, which in the past were enough to generate electricity for the entire population and for that matter for the region, are no more enough to generate as much power for a much larger South African and regional population. Secondly, we need to be able to have continuous growth in the transmission as well of power in that sense, and that as well needs significant amounts of investments which have not happened over time. So overall, that's basically what has happened. We've not increased generation capacity significantly. Number two, we have older plants which break down much more often, and as a result, we have shortages which we are seeing at the moment.
Yeah, and apart from the issue that we're not getting the investment that we'd like to see, and of course we've got aging power plants that we have in the country, how does a country then begin to deal with the crisis? Is there any other country on the African continent, perhaps beyond the continent, than perhaps we could draw from as a teaching as South Africa?
Thank you very much for that question. This is a great question, and this is one of the things which we will be talking about during Africa Energy Week, which is starting next week in Cape Town, and bringing together the entire oil and gas and energy sector from the continent and globally to Cape Town. One of the things which I would like to point to is that there is a country which found itself in a similar situation to South Africa, and that is Egypt. If you went to Egypt about a decade ago, about 6, 7 years ago, Egypt had significant issues with respect to providing energy for the country. What the Egyptians did was very simple. They went back to the resources which they themselves have in abundance, and that is gas. And one thing that we clearly know, particularly after Bopala and some of the other discoveries, is that South Africa has significant amounts of gas. And if not just South Africa, Mozambique on the side, Namibia with recent discoveries have significant amount of gas reserves. We need to be able to quickly implement gas to power solutions in South Africa to be able to support what is happening, to be able to get out of this particular situation. We must use the resources that South Africa has. If South Africa has coal at the moment, before we even get to gas, we need to figure out how we leverage on that. But I do think, and we at the African Energy Chamber think, gas is going to play a significant role in terms of being able to get South Africa out of the current paralysis in which South Africa finds itself. We should not be ashamed of using the resources that we have. And if South Africa has gas, the entire Orange Basin has lots of gas. If South Africa has gas, we need to quickly implement gas to power solutions. We can't wait. And that is what we would be driving at Africa Energy Week come next week where you would have the entire industry.
That's an interesting point that you raised there, because in the South African context, not only do we have environmental activists who are preventing many instances of exploration for gas or any other minerals, but also there is a strong political interference to remain with traditional power providers like coal. They are those with vested interests that would like to remain or leave things as they are to benefit. So that political landscape, but also dealing with the policies around environmental activists and what they can and can't call for, makes it difficulty to introduce these alternative sources of power. So how would you suggest that we engage on this particular issue at the Energy Week next week?
Thank you very much for that question. I'm sorry, but I don't care much for what environmentalists in Norway, in London, or in New York think. What is important, what is really important, is what South Africans and Africans overall can do to be able to get power. Yes, we need to be able to find ways to generate power in sustainable manners, but it is important that we do get our power access correctly. We have 600 million Africans without any kind of access to power, and we have 900 million Africans without any kind of access to clean cooking fuels. So we do not have the same problem with those environmentalists that sit in London with all the power in the world, or that sit in New York with all the power in the world giving us lectures. It is important to notice that due to the geopolitical situations which we have seen in Ukraine and whatever, Germany has gone back to coal. Germany is screaming for more gas. In fact, the amount of coal that South Africa is exporting across the globe has increased. What we need to do is we need to look at ourselves, we need to find the investments, and we need to say we need power. If you are in a hospital in Limpopo, or you are in a hospital in Mpumalanga, you really care less where the power is coming from in that sense. What you want first is power. If you are a student who is sitting in Northwestern, you want power. If you're in Mozambique, what you want is power first. And then we can transition. We can't transition from nothing into whatever it is that people are proposing. We need to be sustainable, yes, but initially we need to provide people with power, because with power, you get jobs, you get agriculture, you get gas to fertilizers. You are able to ensure that people have a decent living and working condition. If we sit now and we start procrastinating about what others are thinking, then we would be in problem. So we would again at Africa Energy Week, come next week, be pushing that position. We are for cleaner ways of generating power, but we need to make sure that people get power first.
Verner Ayukegba, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That is the Senior Vice President at the African Energy Chamber.